black, white, gray. A bull screams. A horse collapses. A mother holds her lifeless child. There are no bombs painted. No visible soldiers. No streaks of red blood. And yet, this is one of the most violent images ever made. This is Pablo Picasso's Guernica. Not just a painting, not just a protest, but a howl of anguish. A war memorial made of brushstrokes and grief. A fractured mirror reflecting the 20th century's darkest hour. Today, we step into the shadow of this masterpiece to examine its origins, its chaos, its defiance, and its legacy. Because Guernica did more than respond to a tragedy. It changed what art could be, and in doing so, gave birth to modern protest art. The year is 1937. Europe stands on the brink. Spain is 2 years into a brutal civil war. On one side, the Republicans, an elected government supported by workers, socialists, and communists. On the other, the nationalists, led by General Francisco Franco, backed by fascist regimes in Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. On April 26th, the world watched in horror. The quiet Basque town of Guernica, a cultural and spiritual capital of the Basque people, was obliterated in a coordinated bombing campaign. It was a Monday, market day. The town square was crowded with civilians, children, mothers, elders, no strategic military targets. For over 3 hours, waves of German and Italian bombers flew overhead. They dropped incendiary bombs, then high explosives, then returned to machine gun survivors. Buildings collapsed, fires raged, screams echoed. Hundreds were killed. Some accounts say thousands. The goal wasn't tactical, it was psychological. A test of terror, a rehearsal for future wars. And it shocked the world. The journalist George Steer published an eyewitness account in the Times, stating, "Guernica was not a military objective. The object of the bombardment was seemingly the demoralization of the civilian population." This report spread globally, including to Paris, where Pablo Picasso was living, and where he had just begun work on a painting for the 1937 World's Fair. Until now, he had no subject. Now, he had one. Picasso was born in Spain, but had lived most of his adult life in Paris. By 1937, he was 55 years old, world famous, and an innovator in almost every genre of modern art. He had developed Cubism. He had explored Surrealism. He had painted beauty, abstraction, eroticism, mythology. But he had never made an overtly political work. Until now, he had been commissioned months earlier to create a mural for the Spanish pavilion at the World's Fair. The goal was to showcase Spain's cultural resilience. But Picasso was uninspired. He produced sketches, but nothing took hold. Then came the bombing of Guernica, and everything changed. Within days, Picasso began feverishly sketching. Over 30 preparatory drawings exist, testaments to his obsessive process. And within just over a month, he created one of the largest and most haunting works of his life. Guernica. Guernica measures over 25 feet wide and 11 feet tall. It dominates any room it enters. But it wasn't designed for comfort. It was created to confront, to demand that the viewer stand before horror. It is monochromatic, a tapestry of grays, blacks, and whites. Part of this was practical. Newspapers reported the bombing in black and white. Picasso chose that palette deliberately. But it also stripped the painting of romanticism. There is no color to distract, no beauty to soften the blow. It is raw visual trauma, and yet it is meticulously composed. Every figure placed with precision, every gesture charged with emotion. It is chaos, carefully designed. The painting is a whirlwind of violence. A bull stands on the left, tall, stoic, indifferent. Below him, a grieving woman holds a limp child in her arms, her head thrown back in agony. At the center, a horse rears in terror, its body pierced by a spear or a shard, its mouth open in a scream. A fallen soldier lies at the bottom, his broken sword beside him, a flower growing from his hand. A light bulb blazes overhead, shaped like an all-seeing eye. Perhaps technology, perhaps surveillance, perhaps divine indifference. A woman leans out of a window, holding a lamp. Another woman stumbles in from the right, arms outstretched in terror, engulfed in flames. There are no backgrounds, no settings, no perspective. It all floats in horror. And yet, each piece is symbolic, each image a fragment of shared pain. Picasso said, "This painting is not done to decorate apartments. It is an instrument of war against brutality and darkness." Much has been written about the symbols in Guernica. The bull, is it Franco? Spain itself? The embodiment of stubborn violence? The horse, the suffering people, a sacrificial animal. The light, a symbol of truth, of technological evil, of judgment. The woman with the lamp. Is she hope, witness, resistance? The beauty of Guernica is its refusal to settle. Picasso himself refused to define the figures. He believed their power came from ambiguity, from the emotional weight they carried, not their literal meaning. And so, Guernica becomes a mirror. We see what we bring to it, and what we fear in ourselves. When Guernica was unveiled at the World's Fair in Paris, it stunned audiences. Some saw brilliance, others blasphemy. It was too large, too ugly, too political. And that was the point. Picasso refused to allow it to return to Spain while Franco was in power. Instead, the painting toured extensively. It raised awareness. It raised funds. It ignited discussion. Eventually, it found a temporary home at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. There it remained, a refugee in exile. Until 1981, 6 years after Franco's death, Guernica was returned to Spain. Not to Madrid, but to the Prado in Madrid. Eventually, it was moved to the Reina Sofia, where it resides today. But the journey matters, because Guernica did not simply survive war. It survived censorship. It survived fascism. It became a symbol of freedom itself. In many ways, Guernica was ahead of its time. Art had always commented on war, but rarely had it condemned it so directly. Guernica was not a glorification. It was a funeral, a warning, an accusation, and it set a precedent. In the decades that followed, protest art would bloom. From Goya to Banksy, from Rivera to Ai Weiwei, from war murals to street art. The legacy of Guernica runs through all of it. Because Picasso proved something that still resonates, art doesn't have to be passive. It can fight. In 2003, as the United States prepared for war in Iraq, a replica of Guernica hung at the UN. When Secretary of State Colin Powell gave a press conference about military intervention, the tapestry was covered. A blue curtain was placed over it. Why? Because it was too uncomfortable, too honest, too powerful. Even 66 years later, it could still make world leaders uneasy. And that is the ultimate proof of its relevance. A painting that still speaks truth to power, that still makes war feel like what it really is: agony, loss, a ruin. Guernica is more than a historical artifact. It is more than a response to a single event. It is a visual language for grief. It teaches us that silence is complicity, that witnessing matters, that art, even without bullets or speeches, can pierce the armor of indifference. Picasso once said, "Every act of creation is first an act of destruction." In Guernica, he destroyed expectation, and in doing so, created a new kind of art. One that doesn't ask to be liked, one that doesn't soothe, one that shouts. Because some stories must be told loudly, and some paintings are louder than words.